Hello everybody and welcome to part 9. In this video we will be talking about modules. So we're going to continue our discussion on modules and what they are and applications. So what I mean by applications are like Python applications that you can actually run and execute. So okay, now that you have that there, um, let's talk about what we are planning to do today. We are planning to create an odd even checker like how we did last time, but use it in a separate file. Now, why would we do that? Why would we create a function and then use it in a separate file? Well, sometimes it could be for the purpose of organization. Sometimes it could be to make it easier to, run through your own program and use. Um, Sometimes you might want to create all the functions in one specific file and then use another file to execute and run them in the order that you want or kind of establish where you want it and why or whatnot. Okay, so let's start off by creating our function definition even, and I'm going to give it the parameter of x. I forgot to mention in the last video that you can name this parameter whatever you want. You can name it x, y, um, z, whatever you want, or any word you want. You can say odd even, whatever you want. And if you want to give it a second parameter, you just have to use the comma and then type in another value. So just y maybe for the purpose of this. I'll say x and y. So these are my two parameters. And when I'm calling it, I can call it, obviously I haven't finished the function. I can say even x equals, and then type in 5 or whatever value I want, y equals, and then type in that value. Or I can straight up just type in the two values as 5, maybe 7 or something like that, do whatever I want. Um, so yeah, you can do that. And make sure you have the colon. Let's do this with only a single parameter. In this case, we're only checking for odd even of one number, but we can obviously do that with two numbers or how many ever parameters that you want to define it as. So if x modulus 2 oops, is 0, then return it is even, else return return it is odd. Okay, so now that we have established this is our function, we can go ahead and open up another document. So I'm going to create a new file and call this part9a.py. Make sure you have your extension given. And also, the reason why I didn't give a space between part and 9 for my first one is I'm going to be importing that. And sometimes it can cause problems when you have spaces. You can circumvent that problem by adding your quotation marks around it. But just to play it safe, because sometimes it will give you errors, with my personal experience, I think it is safe to just say part 9 with no space or use another a hyphen or something else to make sure that it's all one word rather than two separate words because that space can cause problems sometimes and I don't like dealing with that problem personally, so I can just go around that by changing the name of the file. So import, I'm going to be importing part 9 from the last document that we had here. So I'm going to be importing this. So it's going to be able to take up all of the functions that are within that. And then now, if I wanted to use the odd even checker, I can use part 9 dot even because that is our function. And the part 9 is supposed to mean, hey, I am getting it from here. And once I've done that, I can type in our parameter, x equals 6, or I can just type in the number like I said um, just now. But just to make it look nice and make sure that we know what we are typing in, we can do that. And then let's print it out. So if we were to print it out and run the program, we should get that 6 is even. Let's give it a second to load up here. There we go. We get it is even. So now we know that it is even. So why would we use a separate parameter? Let's maybe say that you wanted this to be an odd even checker, but also you wanted it to check if the number is divisible by 5. So I'm just gonna use y as my second parameter. I'll just copy paste this code because I know that our code is gonna be really similar. We can change up a couple things here and there. Okay. Now the only difference is that we're checking to see if it's divisible by 5, and it is divisible by 5, or it is not. Okay, so now that we have established that, and we got to change this to y, by the way, so that we know that there's our second parameter that we're giving it to it. We need to be able to save it. Also, if you had any errors running or through this piece of code here, it might have been because you didn't save this function originally. It's really important to, sorry, not the function, the file. It's really important to save that file because it will know where to grab your function from. Otherwise, it will be a working document and it won't save to your disk, so it's not able to extract that and your file is still open, and it's going to create multiple problems. So make sure that you save this before you go into your executor file or your main file, as most people like to call it. So instead of naming this part NA, you could have named it main, because it's just standard convention among most people to just call that your main file where you execute a bunch of different things. Um, so now here, I have to be able to change this for this to work. Y is equal to 5 or something like that. We know that it's divisible by 5 because it is 5. Let's say maybe 10 or something. We don't know that it is divisible by 5. But if you didn't include your y parameter, you will definitely get an error. So let me show you that before we include our y parameter. So it shows you need a y parameter here. But if you don't include that, you will get an error. Let's wait for it to load for a second. There we go. We got a bunch of errors. We see a problem here. It says no argument given for y. So let's change that and give it an argument. So y is equal to 10. Okay, now let's go back to our terminal and run the program once again. And I get it is even. Okay, and let's go back and make sure that everything's working fine here in this case. Okay, so what it's doing is it's only printing out the first part here, and it's not printing out the second parameter. And we can fix that by um, creating a different function for it and then doing it that way. But we know that it is working because we are able to give the parameter in it, and we're able to return that value. So because we're using the return function, and once we print that, we get it is even. Let's try that one more time. There we go. It still gives you it is even. So in order to change that, you can use a different function for it and then run it that way rather than doing it this way. Also, another way that you could have done this, I'm going to delete our divisible by 5 function here. Okay, and save this. That's really important. If you knew that you only had one function in this whole file, you can say from part9, part9, import even. Now this will only import the even function, and you can simply just write out even like how you did previously, and then give your x and y parameters. And I forgot to delete that parameter there. And now if I go back, it's not going to ask me for that parameter. Let's say 2 once again, and it's only asking for one parameter. Once I run it, oh, whoops, I didn't print it out, so I don't know what it's giving out as a return. Whoa, okay. So it prints it is even. That worked out. And notice how you have this new folder created called PyCache. This basically keeps the part9, since you're importing it, and keeps it in your cache as a PYC file. And that's really important. So even if you delete it, it will be recreated by itself once you run this program. And one last thing, if you were to maybe have multiple different functions in here and you just wanted to import all of them at once, you didn't want to use the part9 dot and then do it that way, you can say from part9 import star. So this will import all your functions from it, and then you don't have to use the part9 dot. You can just straight up use the function that you want, and Python will search for it and give it to you. And that's about it for this video. Thank you for watching.